This is a position that Light Vector shared recently. He discovered this while exploring some of the variations from Kotako's 8x8 opening book, which has just been released. You can check out the link to that in the description. And I also wanted to share this here, make this video about it, hopefully make the solution accessible to more people, because I thought this was really, really cool. So we have this game here. White has just captured on a6, so black cannot immediately recapture the ko. Both sides are out of ko threats. You notice that there are no center moves inside the black territory, and the only move black has available to continue fighting the ko is a3. So not an actual ko threat, but rather a move that prevents white from immediately filling the ko at a5. And the problem now is there any way for white to win this ko from this position? So let's say this is Chinese rules, 9 komi, and then the game depends on winning this ko. Can you find a way for white to do it? I leave a link to a demo board in the description if you want to play out variations for yourself. It's quite difficult, but doable if you spend some time looking at variations. So please take some time and explore it for yourself if you want to. And then I'm going to go through some of the variations. So to start with, there's no point in connecting b4 immediately, because black just captures the ko. White doesn't have a ko threat, like we said. g6, for instance, is not a threat. White would need 2 more moves to live here, so this just loses. Rather, white has to spend a move creating ko threats for later. So because a3 was not actually a threat, white can afford to ignore it, make a move that creates ko threats, let black recapture the ko, and then make a threat. And now there are many different threats to consider here. You could do A, B, or C. Let's maybe take one at a time. If white tries A, this is a threat. Black has to respond to keep this group dead. This would be no good for black. This is much bigger. So black should respond to this threat. Then white can recapture the ko. But now black is in a similar position where black can't actually recapture the ko. Black doesn't have any local useful move here, so black instead just spends some time removing white's threats. And with this move, now there are no more threats remaining for white, so white can't connect a5, white has to connect b4, recaptures the ko, and white is lost. So that doesn't work. Let's try instead e8. Black again has to respond. White again recaptures the ko. Black spends a move removing threats. White cannot immediately play a5, but has to start his ko. And now white almost has a threat here. If black responded here, white would be happy. But actually black can connect the ko. And even though white can reduce black to 1 eye, when black cuts here, white is reduced to no eyes, so white is dead, and this is winning for black. So that doesn't work. But if white plays f8, this is important difference here. f8 takes a liberty from these stones, and that will matter in the variation we just saw. So in this case, black responds to the threat, white recaptures ko, black removes threats, white starts ko, black takes, and now white has a threat on d8. If black connects a6, white can play b8, and now black is reduced to 1 eye. There's no throwing at c8. And when black cuts here, this is a snapback, so this is a real eye. So this in the end will be a sickie. So that's a success for white. So actually black has to respond to this threat, white recaptures the ko, black has no threat, and white wins the game. Very cool. So you'll notice that at this point, it's impossible for black to spend 1 move to remove all of white's threats. If black plays here to remove this threat instead, then of course white gets this threat. So there's no way for black to win from here. But we could also consider, how about at this time, when white spends a move setting up the threats? What happens if black doesn't spend a move on the left, but rather sort of tries to already now respond here and keep white without threats? This is slightly tricky, because now it sort of seems like, yeah, if white just responds here, trying to keep the threats, then let's see, black recaptures and white still doesn't have any threats. So the correct thing to do here is to connect the ko, black captures, and now this is actually a threat for similar reasons as before. If a6, white plays b8. It's important not to play c8 here, because this will allow black to live, but b8, and it's kind of similar to before, only without this exchange here. So that's working, but also, what about black playing this one? Similar idea, white has to first start a ko immediately, then use f8 as a threat. This is maybe one of the more trickier moves to find. Because this, again, it doesn't really seem like it's threatening to live. White would still need sort of both a move at h5 and capture at d8 to live. But if black connects, that's exactly what white gets, because when white captures, this is sent the same variation as before. So like this, white lives, and of course, if black responds to this move, then white wins the ko. Okay, so those are all the main variations. Probably I left out something interesting. Feel free to look at it more yourself. But just repeat the main idea. From here on, white doesn't immediately start a ko, but creates threats. And if black captures the ko, white makes a threat, which also makes it impossible for black with even 2 moves in a row. So black responds to the threat, and then also gets to spend 1 move removing threats, but black still can't remove all of white's threats. So in the end, white gets to win the ko and win the game by 1 point. One very interesting final wrinkle here is I said this was under Chinese rules. Why is that? Well, if this were Japanese rules, then the ko here, winning the ko, is only worth a single point. If we compare, white just connecting here, giving up the ko, to white winning the ko, that's just a 1 point difference. So white is hoping to gain 1 point. But the moment white plays g6, this is a -1 point move under Japanese rules. So at this point, black can just say, okay, you already gave me a free point, so now you can have the ko, and white actually didn't gain anything. So under Japanese rules, while white still can win the ko, it's not sort of worthwhile doing so. So this only works, in this case, under Chinese rules. Hope you found this interesting. Please check out the links in the description to Kotoko opening books. And thanks for watching.